Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. Thank you for joining me today or coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. Apologize for the delay in getting started. And also, I appreciate everybody who takes the time to listen to the show. So thanks for being here. And I appreciate everybody's patience. I haven't been around for the last couple of weeks. I've actually been with my daughter. She had her first baby, and I've been busy falling madly in love with my new granddaughter. So thank you for your patience, and thank you to one of my live listeners, Joe, for his patience as well. I appreciate everybody who watches. So last time on Talks with Tracy, show number 60, we talked about attachment, meeting the attachment needs of our children, and it couldn't have been better timing because that same week my daughter had her baby. So it's really been fresh on my mind. It really brought to the forefront the importance of providing a safe, stable, secure experience for our children. Now, last time I had the pleasure and honor of visiting with the incredible Dr. Neil Boris, who is an absolute expert on attachment. And he is an infant, child, adolescent psychiatrist. And he is the trainer and program developer of Circle of Security International. And there was so much to talk about. I felt like we just kind of touched the tip of the iceberg. So I have asked him back today to be with us to continue our conversation about the importance of meeting our children's attachment needs and really establishing a strong, healthy, solid foundation, excuse me, for our children. And Neil has graciously agreed to be back with us today. So please join me in welcoming back to the show the amazing Dr. Neil Boris.
Well, thank you, Tracy. It's lovely to be with
Hi.
you. And congratulations on your new granddaughter. How exciting is that?
Oh,
What a
it is
time.
so exciting. Yes. I was thinking about some of the things that we talked about in our last show about, how important it is, the environment that we provide. And I was just noticing things with my new granddaughter who is just a couple weeks old now. And I was just noticing so many things with her facial expressions and like from the start it was really amazing, and I was really putting um, all this knowledge, those things that we talked about, to use. And it just brings your awareness up so much when you have this model. Now, last time you were on, we presented the Circle of Security model. I'm going to ask
Mm,
Caleb to put that image up again because it really, not to reiterate too much what we already went
sure.
over in the last episode, but it
Sure.
really provides the basis for our talk when we're talking about attachment needs. So I'd like to bring that image back up. And if you could just briefly summarize that circle as a means of kind of getting into this discussion again, I'd really appreciate that. Caleb, do you have that image? There we go.
And there it
So yeah,
is.
Neil, could you just briefly describe this image for us?
Sure, Tracy. This image is really all about attachment. And for those of you who've heard of that word, it's been around for, 75 years or so. John Bowlby began interest in attachment by writing some books back in the 1960s. And in essence, we've tried to summarize the basic ideas around attachment with a visual. And there it is. The words secure base and safe haven come directly from Bowlby's books, right? So again, we're literally bringing to life in a graphic this principle about how children, your granddaughter included, are born with this attachment system, this functioning system. And the system has different goals. So we look at this circle diagram and think about the top of the circle. You see the word support my exploration. And even your granddaughter, who can't physically move across a room just yet, is absolutely exploring her sensory world, right? If you put a bright light in front of her, she'll close her eyes and push her head back, right? That's a lot of sensory information coming in. But if you give her a nice calm shush and a warm hug and hold, um, she'll immediately calm. And so, from when babies are born, and certainly this figure looks at toddlers and preschoolers as they begin to literally move around the world, they are destined to go out to explore, again, that top half of the circle, and when hungry, tired, afraid, distressed, are going to come back in on the bottom half of that circle, Tracy, toward their safe haven. You'll see some words with dashes in front of them. Those are the needs on the circle. The top half needs, the bottom half needs. And then in the lower right hand corner, where the hands are, is that third part of the circle. Really, the caregiver is the hands for any child. And this is kind of a mantra about what the job of the caregiver is as the child naturally travels the circle. So there's my short and sweet on the diagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So, um, Caleb, is it possible to put our faces up and the image as well? I don't know if that's possible, but so Neil, I have explained to you, and I say this all the time on the show, that this show is really meant to inspire people to do that deep dive into their emotional experience for the
Yeah,
sake of healing. And we really, here we talk about um, the importance of doing that. We provide information, different ideas about how we can accomplish that. People share their experiences. And how can this model help with that? Like, how can healing ourselves emotionally help us to be better parents? I think we all have positive intention, and I'm sure you've seen this too, but even with the highest risk parents, and I've worked with a lot of high risk parents, like in the world of child protection and foster care and things like that. I have always found that regardless of circumstance, that all parents, and I really truly can say this, all parents have positive intention and want what's best for their children. They may not always be providing that for
sure,
different reasons,
sure.
but they have a desire and an intention for their children to be healthy. Do you agree?
Oh, I do, Tracy. And in fact, we talk about positive intentionality, quite literally the words that you chose in our
Okay.
trainings and with parents. Parents really do deeply want to connect with their kids. I mean, being a parent is stressful, it's challenging, it's interesting, it can be incredibly gratifying and fun. It's all of the above. But most parents really care about the experiences that their kids have with them from the moment they wake up to the moment both parent and child are asleep. This is what parents think about. So they have that
Right.
positive intentionality. Absolutely.
Right. And I think it's kind of a universal truth that we as parents always feel at some point that we're totally messing our kids up.
For
I
sure.
have felt that felt that myself, and had to we can be really hard on ourselves as parents, but again, I love that positive intentionality for sure. So how can what circle of security teaches, how can it really help parents to kind of look inward to see how they're impacting their kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that is sort of at the center of our circle security interventions. So one of them is called Circle Security Parenting. It's a video-based parenting intervention that tends to take place over 8 to 10 weeks with a trained provider who is going to introduce that same circle that we just talked about, Tracy, but really dig in to help parents sort out their strengths and their struggles as they follow their child around that circle. And that's the interesting part, right, Tracy? We all know we have areas of strength and struggle in whatever we decide to do, whether it's we're taking up juggling or piano lessons or what have you, right? And so parenting is no different than anything else in our lives. There are things we're really good at and things that we struggle with. What's interesting, though, about parenting is we tend to struggle with things that were challenging for us in relationships, going all the way back to our early relationships. And you and I talked a bit about that the first time we chatted it on your show.
Right, because we're all a product of our own being parented experience.
Of course. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I hear
Absolutely.
people all the time say things like, "I caught myself sounding like my mom,"
Right.
and they don't
Right.
necessarily mean that in a good way,
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
I've worked with so many parents who say, I swore I would never um,
Mm,
be or sound like my mom. And yet here I am at that familiar place. And sometimes it's not that, right, Tracy? Sometimes it's, oh, my mom was really harsh. And so I'm going to
mhm,
swing the pendulum all the way away from that. And yet that could be my
mhm.
struggle. I can't set a limit now, and my kids need
Right.
limits, right? So it's not this one to one, we're gonna be our parents. It's this idea
Mhm.
that we're going to react to our relationship history as a parent.
Right. So, and that tends to, without awareness of that, maybe we want to repeat that. Maybe we had a positive
That's
parenting
right. Yeah,
experience.
sure.
I had great parents, so there's a lot of things that I wanted to repeat. But
Right.
in the case where it was less positive, we tend to repeat those kind of patterns and behaviors without even really knowing it, right?
That's absolutely right. And so that is sort of well understood in attachment literature, tons of research around this. Again, we are impacted by our history. I do want to say again, though, that it's not simple and linear, right, Tracy? So, in other words, again, if we had a harsh parent, we may react to having had a harsh
Mhm.
parent by swinging, but we're
Right.
still reacting to having had a harsh parent, right? So our
Correct.
history does influence a lot about where we start.
Right. Absolutely. Can you give some, you already are, kind of are, but can you give some examples of
Sure,
what it would look like for a parent to struggle on the different parts of the circle? Like what
absolutely.
that might look like?
And that's why this graphic is so helpful, right? Because it lays out the steps you have going out to explore and then returning into the safe haven. And then the job of the caregiver, the hands. So those are the of the circle. And we couples anywhere on those three, right? So let's take the top part of the circle. We'll start there. For some caregivers, allowing their children out to explore is challenging. Okay. Many caregivers will describe things like, oh, I just want him to be close to me. I feel rejected when he moves away. Okay. So that may be
Mm,
the kind of thing a parent might say they struggle on the top. Or maybe they'll say, not I feel rejected, but oh, it's not safe out there. right?
Mm.
I'm just always worried, even on the playground where I think things are safe. I can't let my kid explore that steeper slide because I'm sure they're going to get hurt, right? So these are just the kinds of examples, simple ones, where we might see a parent struggling on the top half.
Okay.
What about the bottom half? Well, that's when children are coming into us and you see those needs: protect me, comfort me, delight in me, or organize my feelings. And and some parents may say, you know what? I always feel like he's just manipulating me for
Mm.
attention, right? So instead of seeing a child coming in as a need for comfort, they kind of experience it as something negative, something stressful, maybe overwhelming, again, maybe manipulative, right? And so there is a struggle place on the circle. Or maybe when their child has big feelings, and all parents know that children have big feelings, maybe organizing feelings like tantrums, for example, is just so stressful and overwhelming. You just want to walk away, right?
Mm.
So, once again, as we listen to parents talk about parenting, we get a sense of areas where they're confident and areas where they seem to be struggling. The last part, that third part, the hands part, is interesting, Tracy, because if you look at that mantra in the lower right about being bigger, stronger, wiser, kind, whenever possible, I'm going to follow my child's need. That's just following them around the circle, in essence. Whenever necessary, I'm going to take charge. Well, here's where parents may struggle. They may struggle with taking charge. So their kid says, I'm not doing that. And the parent needs the child to get in the car to go to the doctor's appointment or whatever it may be, but really has a hard time staying strong. Yes, we've got to get in the car, and kind. So let's, right? And so setting limits, balancing bigger, stronger, wiser, kind can be a real challenge for parents. So there's top, there's bottom, and there's what we call hands.
Right. And would you say that when parents struggle in these different areas, any areas around the circle, would you say that it creates a certain amount of chaos in the relationship?
Yeah, I don't think the word chaos is always necessarily going to apply. So, for
Okay.
example, let's say the parent's uncomfortable with the comfort me on the bottom. Some children are simply going to respond by not reaching out. So they'll go to their rooms and quietly read a book, but not let the parent know that they're feeling sad or distressed. So
Okay.
that's not chaotic, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, other children, and parents will sometimes describe this, are going to come in for comfort. The parent's uncomfortable and they drop into a tantrum and throw something on the ground. And that feels quite chaotic, right, Tracy?
Okay.
So I don't
Mhm.
think necessarily the word chaos fits.
Okay.
What I do think is that kids learn where their parents struggle on the circle and they create coping strategies, even in the first years of life, to manage that. Some of them will feel chaotic, others of them less so. Does that make sense?
Right. It does. And so it's already time to take a commercial break because we kind of
Sure.
started a little bit late. I apologize for that. But when
Yeah,
we come back, I'd like to just touch on again um, the miscuing that then
sure.
happens
Absolutely.
when a parent does have those kind of vulnerabilities or weaknesses in those
Yeah.
certain areas of the circle. And then I also have so many questions in my mind. for you about different kind of situations that I'll bring up after the break as well. But let's cut to a commercial break, and you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hello, welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. I have the honor and privilege today of visiting with the amazing Dr. Neil Boris. Thank you, Neil. Now, we've been talking about the Circle Security Roadmap for meeting our children's attachment needs. And we were talking about how when we do experience some vulnerability as a parent or weakness around the circle, that that can cause behaviors within our children too. They're in tune to us and they will react essentially to whatever we're providing.
Yep.
Yeah, can you explain miscues?
Yeah, so cues and miscues are pretty simple concepts, Tracy. All of us as human beings signal each other all the time, right? And we're sending signals about what we want from one another, what we need from one another, okay? And so sometimes when we've had a stressful day and we come home and say to our partner, this one was over the top. I just need a quick hug. And would you mind a glass of water? That's a pretty direct, clear cue about what one needs, right?
Right.
We also come home some days after a hard day, Tracy, and we drop our keys into the key holder with a little bit of extra vigor, and our partner says to us, "How you doing?" And we say, "I'm just fine, thank you." Okay? And our partner's like, "Well, that doesn't really seem like that's true." So that's what we would call a miscue, right? We're like, "Yeah, you know what? I could use a hug and a glass of water." But for whatever reason, I'm going to say it's all good. And we're pretty good at sorting this out, adult to adult. With kids, it's interesting, right? Because kids learn to do exactly the same kinds of cueing and miscueing with us as caregivers. So this is something we learn very early in life. So we may send a direct signal about what we need, like comfort, mama, need a hug, okay, boom. Or we may send an indirect signal. And imagine if that signal with a need for comfort was falling on the floor, kicking and screaming. That's a confusing kind of miscue for a parent to sort out,
Mm.
but it may well happen, right? So
Right.
cues, clear signals, and miscues, really not clear signals about needs, are part of all human relationships.
Right. Okay. So I work with a lot of kids who
Yeah,
have big behavioral issues,
sure.
and I've always come from the perspective of relationship. And
Yeah,
I've always believed that the solutions, essentially, for helping a child with their behavior really lies in the relationship they have with their caretaker,
right.
and I require parents to be a part of any child's mental health therapy that I do with them, because I really see that their environment and their relationships that they're in every single day are the answers to are there that's where the solutions lie.
Yeah,
I've seen lots of people bring their kids to me, children having big behaviors, and I feel like they struggle with that taking charge.
sure.
I believe this requires some balance in parenting. You don't want to go too weak, and you
Yeah,
don't want to be mean.
right.
And some parents go back and forth
Yeah,
between being weak and being mean, and it does create a really difficult environment. And then the children are just like reacting all over the place and cueing and
yeah.
miscuing with this big behavior. Can you help me sort that out a little bit? What's happening in that?
Well, I think you've sorted it out pretty well. And you used the word chaos a little while ago, and I said, well,
Um,
it's not always chaotic, right? However, in instances where the struggle is in balancing bigger, stronger, wiser, kind, where
right.
parents tip toward weak, and then after they're fed up, right,
Mm.
they go mean and get really harsh. Well, that does create for a kid a real problem, because that set of hands that's supposed to welcome you in isn't
Mm-hmm.
welcoming. It's either not available, I'm not stepping up, I'm weak, or angry mean. And
Mm.
that is chaotic for kids. So now I'm with you on the chaos side of things. And
Right.
understanding you work with families where that kind of struggle, parenting struggle, that particular brand is front and center, things will
Mm.
get chaotic. Because kids
Right.
need that safe haven, but the safe haven doesn't feel safe sometimes.
Right. Yeah, on either end of it,
That's
that
right.
it doesn't feel safe for kids to have a parent go weak either.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I tell parents, I tell parents that I try to help parents understand that when all that behavior is happening, it really is coming from a place of fear for the child.
Sure.
And they inherently know that they shouldn't be in charge of
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
At some level, they know that they make very poor decisions and they need somebody else to be in charge. They have a lack of life experience. They don't know how to regulate
Yeah.
and run things. And so I try to help people understand that there's a fear that happens in their children, because I think if parents can see the fear happening in their kids, they can have more compassion around it.
Absolutely. And we tend to break it down in sort of a sequence, Tracy, because you're talking about behaviors, right? And
Yes.
most parents are just responding to behaviors. So my child gets angry and pushes his sibling over, right?
Hmm.
And I either lose it or do nothing because
Mm.
I'm stressed, I'm tired, I can't deal with it, right? That's either going mean or weak. Okay.
Right. Hmm.
So the behavior is a sibling behavior. We see kinds of stuff all the time. What is the need underneath that for the child who did the pushing? What is
Mm.
the feeling that the child is dealing with? And you're talking about
Mhm.
feelings like fear. These are
Mhm.
things that are below the surface that most parents aren't tracking, they're
Mm.
not aware of. And because pushing your brother over is a provocative behavior, they're just responding to the behavior, not thinking about the need or the feeling. So you're right,
Mhm.
Tracy. We start asking parents to get beyond behavior using our roadmap, start
Mhm.
figuring out really what is the need and what might be the feeling. Okay. And that's when things get a little more interesting.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that this roadmap helps people get beyond the behavior.
Right.
I feel like I do my best to help people get beyond the behavior all the time
Right.
and really take them out of that loop of. I find that in situations like this, like you've just described and I've just described, sometimes as parents we get into this place where even if our kids are trying really hard to be good, we tend to see that as some kind of manipulation, or
Right.
we tend to remind them that even though they're being good now, that doesn't mean that I've forgotten that they just did this.
Right.
I see
Yeah.
that loop, and that's in from my perspective. I feel like that's kind of reinforcing
Sure.
the behavior we don't want
Yeah.
when we do that loop. Do you agree?
I do. And this gets into something that's also interesting, right, Tracy, is that through experience, we adults, but kids as well, start to put together stories about how we see other people. Um,
Mm.
when the story begins to turn into a story of my kid's manipulative, difficult,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
angry all the time, if we just step back right there and say, well, what's it going to be like to parent that child if that's your version of who this person is? Well, we
Okay.
can immediately say that's really, really going to be difficult. So that's why we kind of say let's step away from the story and let's just look at what's happening right now. What is the need? Let's pin it back to that circle. What do you think
Okay.
the child's